It's the Mike Francesa Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Hello again, everybody. The Mike Francesa Podcast on the BetRivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. All right, a Friday podcast with a lot going on this weekend. Plenty of pivotal basketball, starting with tonight's Knicks game, which is an 8:30 start. Now the games are a precious few here and there, and they like to have one every night. So tonight, the Knicks, 8:30, Game 6 in Indianapolis. I already put up the same game parlay, which tonight incorporated Brunson and DiVincenzo and McBride. So we'll see if that clicks this evening. Game 7 would be Sunday. We don't have a time yet because there's already another game on Sunday. That will be the T-Wolves, who blew out the Nuggets in Game 6 after losing games 3, 4, and 5. They will be in Denver for a pivotal and deciding Game 7. Game 6 tomorrow in Dallas. Game 8 o'clock tomorrow night, Thunder Mavericks. Game 6 tomorrow night as the Mavs look to make it to the conference final behind Luka Doncic, obviously, and his play has hit the upswing, which has got to be very positive for them. Before we get into the Knicks a little bit tonight, OG, of course, will not play. Just a stunning, amazing comeback by the Rangers last night to win that series in 6 with the amazing third period. Call it the Kreider comeback, if you will, with his hat trick and his ability around the net. Obviously, they hit some posts. The Rangers were also the beneficiaries of some clutch goaltending. And that stall penalty was pivotal, absolutely pivotal, after they gave up a soft second goal to make it 3-2. That stall penalty was absolutely pivotal, and a very tough finish for Carolina. A great win, one of the great wins in franchise history for the Rangers, as they now will await the winner of the Panthers and the Bruins, who will play Game 6 tonight in Boston. We'll get to the Preakness in a couple of minutes. That coming up tomorrow with Muth out. Thankfully, the Derby winner is in, which creates plenty of anticipation and plenty of discussion, although it is not a great race by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think Mystic Dan will win. He got a perfect trip in the Derby. There's an old adage in racing: if you're not there for the wedding, don't be there for the funeral. So I wasn't there for Mystic Dan. I will not be there for him this time either. There's a couple of new shooters here, which will be a problem. I don't think there's any question. Not a lot of pace in the race, but enough pace in the race that it shouldn't be slow. I think it'll be reasonable. I don't think it'll be overwhelmingly fast. But I do think it'll be a reasonable pace. All right, let's get to Game 6 tonight for a second first. Yes, the Knicks have had an extra day off, which is helpful. At this point of the series, it's helpful for everybody, but it's clearly helpful for the Knicks, who are still playing shorthanded. As I told you, I wanted to see Tibbs put a guard in the lineup and take Achua out. I think it's imperative that he started He could have started Burks. He started McBride. That's fine. It could have taken either one because Burks has played well. But they needed to have another offensive player in the game early. They needed to have the energy that McBride will give you. That Achua is limited. He's limited very much offensively, and that can really curtail what the Knicks want to do, especially early when they want to get off. The same thing tonight. You want to get off fast. The key for the Knicks tonight is to get this game into the final minutes of the third quarter where they are still in touch with the game. Indiana's going to try and knock them out. There's no question about that. They're going to come at him in waves. They're going to try to knock him out, and there will be a couple of times in the game, even if the Knicks get off to a fast start or get off to a lead, there will be a couple of times in the game, in the first three quarters, where Indiana will be looking to deliver the knockout. The knockout, when it comes early, it can end the game, especially in basketball, where the home court is much bigger than the home ice is, say, in hockey. You look last night, as an example, on the Minnesota-Denver game, okay? They delivered a knockout punch right away. They delivered a knockout punch early in the game that decided things. That you knew that Denver was not coming back. Okay? Minnesota said, we're here. We're going to play this game with an intensity, with a ferocity that is going to end things. That game was over in the first quarter last night. That's it. It was flat out over in the first quarter. Hands down. There was no issue about it. That game was 9-9 halfway through the first quarter. And then all of a sudden, here came the run. Towns went to the basket with a dunk. Now all of a sudden, Denver starts to miss shots. Conley misses a shot, hits a shot. Then Jokic misses a shot. Then Edwards makes a big shot. Now all of a sudden, Minnesota's on a 9-0 run. But it doesn't end there. Okay? Before you know it, this game, which was 9-9, is 29-11. So in the span of 5 minutes, that game went from 9-9 to 29-11. After 29-11, it was never a game again. It was over. They added a solid second quarter where neither team got away from the other, but Denver didn't come back. Then in the third quarter, Minnesota edged it out again. And in the fourth quarter, Denver said, we give up. And it turns into 115-70. But that game ended halfway through the first quarter. Tonight, after a couple of minutes of back and forth, Indiana will try to deliver the same knockout punch. Halliburton will get aggressive from three. They'll go to their dribble penetration. They'll go to the bench and they'll bring in McConnell and Obi Toppin and Shepard, and they will try to ratchet it to another level. And they will try to break open. They will try to get first to a 5-point lead, then they'll try to get to a 12-point lead, then they'll try to get to a 20-point lead. They get that 20-point lead, that game is over. That game gets to 20 points, it is never coming back. They will try to end that game. The Knicks will have to get in that game tonight, withstand the crowd, and withstand those early energy bursts that Indiana's going to throw at them. If they don't, you can pack your bags and get ready for Game 7. You're going to have to take a handful of those into the third quarter, and not until the end of the third quarter. At that point, if that game is close, the Knicks will have withstood everything they have to withstand, and now the game's going to go to the wire. Doesn't mean that they're going to lose. Doesn't mean Indiana's going to lose, but it means the game's going to go to the wire and the Knicks going to have a chance. Before that, though, Indiana is just going to look to land the knockout punch. Dismiss the game. take the other team's will away and make them realize they are running straight uphill and it is a futile effort to waste energy and go after the game. You don't want to give up on the game ever, but there comes a point where you say, okay, this is futile. We're not getting anywhere. We're not going to score. Okay, we can't match their energy. Last night, Minnesota had 62 rebounds to 43 for Denver. They had 15 threes to 7 for Denver. Denver shot 19% from three, 30% from the floor. They were doing nothing. And Minnesota was just piling it on, wave after wave after wave. And with tonight, they'll come out tonight. They'll look to get Halliburton to the basket. Then they will look to get him open from three. They will look to get Turner in the pick and roll. And at about the 5 or 6 minute mark, they will go to the bench and try to accelerate the offense and open the game wide open offensively and try and spread whatever little lead there is that they're up to a big lead. And that's what the Knicks will have to withstand. See, the Knicks did that in Game 3. It was the one game where the bench did not come out and perform for Indiana until Game 5, where, once again, the bench didn't come out and perform for Indiana. Okay, same thing happened in the second quarter. In the second quarter, the Knicks edged out to a solid lead. And then in the third quarter, they said, good night, the lights. That's it. They said, good night, the lights. We're done. We're done here. We're going to take a halftime lead. Okay? 10 minutes into the third quarter, that game is, Miles Turner makes a three, and that game is 70-63. And Indiana's thinking, okay, we are 1 or 2 baskets away from closing this gap and making this a competitive night. And what happens? Dante makes a shot. Right? That turns out to be a big basket. Hart gets a layup. McBride knocks down a three. Brunson makes a floater. And all of a sudden, that 7-point lead is 18. And Indiana says, good night, the lights. McBride gets a dunk. Now it's 20. Place is going crazy. Halliburton misses a shot. Obi Toppin commits a foul. And the next thing you know, Dante makes a tip dunk. The place is going crazy. Knicks are up 22, and Indiana is looking for the door. It doesn't take much to break these games open at home. And the home team knows that we must not let the visitor hang around, because then it becomes a dangerous fourth quarter game. And then it becomes a point where it's anybody's game. When you go on the road in these kind of very emotional games, and listen, Indiana's going to have gone home and gotten beat up. They're going to have gotten beat up by the coaching staffs. They're going to have gotten beat up by everything they read and everything they heard and everything that was said in the town about how bad they were in Game 5. And they're going to be waiting to deliver some punishment tonight. And the Knicks know this is a fine line for them. But Indiana will try to pound them right out of the building, just as you saw Minnesota do last night. Run them right smack out of the building. Let them know, not tonight. You have to withstand that. Not once, not twice, 3, 4, 5 times sometimes before you can get what you want out of that game. It is a tall order. A very tall order. And it will be a very difficult one for the Knicks tonight. They will need Brunson to be very, very good again. They will need Dante to be on his game offensively, which he really hasn't been the last couple of games. They will need McBride, who logged a lot of minutes the other day, to be there. They will need Burks to be there again. They will need a really good game man for Hart and Hartenstein to stay out of foul trouble because they need both of them on the backboards in the worst way. There's a lot of needs there. There's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of things that have to happen there for that to happen. It is not easy. So I put the same game parlay in that vein. Brunson has to be good. His numbers have to be good. Dante has to show up and has to be good. And McBride has to be good. He's got to pick up the slack. Otherwise, it's not going to happen on the road. The Preakness tomorrow down in Baltimore. You know that he's bringing 2 horses there. He's done very well at the Preakness. He's done very well everywhere, but he's done really well at the Preakness through the years. In recent years, he hasn't been able to run. Obviously, at Churchill Downs, we know what's going on there. Muth would have been the favorite. Would have been a heavy favorite, as a matter of fact. Now the horse is out of the race because it spiked a fever. He still has Intimidation, who will show speed. I'll tell you who else is going to show speed tomorrow. I don't think there's any question. Is Mystic Dan will sit off the early pace, not far off it, but will sit off it. But Just Steel is going to show speed. I don't think there's any question. I'd be very surprised. He showed speed in the Derby. He finished up the track. I would expect that he would show speed. I would think that he would sit right off Imagination. There are some horses in this race that I think are a cut below. I think Seize the Gray that won the Pat Day Mile is a cut below. I think that Uncle Heavy is a cut below. I think that Muggatu is a cut below. Catching Freedom ran a 4th place finish in the Derby. He is a legitimate racehorse. He should be far better than he was. If you go to the Louisiana Derby, Catching Freedom finished ahead of Anna Marie, who had no chance in the Derby, who will run in the Belmont. And Tuscan Gold, who Chad Brown is bringing into this race with a profile that looks like some of his other winners in this race, ran 3rd in that race. Catching Freedom ran an okay 4th. Didn't run great, ran okay, missed a length and 3/4 in the Derby. In this small field, he will be in far better shape. He and Tuscan Gold will be the horses that are coming from behind. It'll probably be Imagination on the front with Just Steel right off his flank, right there with him. You might get a surprise. One of the other horses might push the pace from the inside, but I don't think they'll be a meaningful challenge. Catching Freedom, Mystic Dan, Tuscan Gold, Imagination. There are your 4 horses. I think Imagination will cut it. Baffert has his horses ready. The horse is trained well. He's going to run fast. I don't think there's any question about that. I think he will set the pace. I don't think he'll get out to a loose lead. I think that Lucas's horse will keep him, Just Steel will keep him in his area code, stay with him. And then obviously you're going to have the horses that are going to be Mystic Dan will look to make that early move. He'll be that stalker, and then you'll have the two behind, which will be Tuscan Gold and Catching Freedom, who I think will be I think Imagination's going to run well. I think one of the other two horses will be on the wire with Imagination. For some reason, I like the way Tuscan Gold has been brought up to this race. I like everything about him. I like how lightly raced he is. I like what he did in his last race. I like Gaffleone. I think he's sitting on a good race. I think the Derby horses that run back, I think are going to be compromised a little. So I think it's going to be Tuscan Gold over Imagination. I would put Catching Freedom third. I'm not going to go with Mystic. See, I don't think McPeak wanted to run him, but his connections wanted to, the owners wanted to, and I don't knock the owners one bit. I actually applaud them for being sportsmen and putting their horse in the Preakness after winning the Derby. I really feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel there's some obligation in doing that. But giving you 1, 2, 3 under the wire in the Preakness, I will go Tuscan Gold, Imagination, and then Catching Freedom. That would be my 1, 2, 3. And I don't think that is going to be any, revelation. I think those three horses are going to be very much a big part of everybody's scenario tomorrow. You might have some Mystic Dan followers. I think, number one, he is a slight horse who I think is compromised by coming back in 2 weeks. I also think, despite the fact he was the only horse that ran well, that got near the pace, I think he stayed right in the perfect spot. He was far enough removed from the pace not to be burned on it, but he was close enough to the pace to get the inside jump on everybody. Plus, he cut the corner and saved a ton of ground, which made him the winner of the Derby. I don't take that away from him at all. It was one of the great Derby rides ever. It was a classic Derby ride. And you have some really good race riders in this race. You really do. You have some really, really good race riders in this race. And the Tory on Imagination, Gaffleone on Tuscan Gold. I think you're talking about really terrific. Pratt on Catching Freedom. You're talking about really good jocks. I mean, really terrific talent. And there's a lot of talent, as always, in the jockey colony. But I particularly like what Gaffleone's been doing. He's riding in a winning fashion, although he's a little daring. I think it's Tuscan Gold, followed by Imagination and Catching Freedom in a kind of ho-hum race. I do not think that Mystic Dan will win, and I do not think the winner of this race will win the Belmont. I think the Belmont will be won by a horse that isn't running tomorrow. So that's how I see the Preakness. I gave you the same game parlay. Go to the BetRivers app for all of your wagering needs and for all their promotions that they have going on during the playoffs and hopefully we'll be getting ready. Who knows? Right now, I think it's going to be Rangers, Florida. But how about if it was Rangers, Boston, Knicks, Boston? How much fun would that be? Not that Knicks, Boston isn't going to be a whole lot of fun if it happens, and I think it will happen. It is. It's going to be great. And it really is. It really does take you back to, halcyon days gone by. But how about if you had both? And you had Rangers, Bruins, and Knicks, Celtics, both in the conference finals. How much better with those how much better than that could it possibly get? If you're a Ranger fan, you have to feel very good about you were sitting there looking at a Game 7, and now you have to feel very good about your team going forward. Because they won the kind of game that you have to win along the way here. Knicks would like to do the same thing, but I believe they're short-handed, and I think it will take its toll. Plus, I'll tell you right now, I think the Knicks will win Game 7 at home because I think the Knicks are very long on toughness. Very, very long on 1-2 and toughness. And Indiana is very, very short on guts. So I do think Indiana will win Game 6, but I think the Knicks will win Game 7. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Francesa Podcast on the BetRivers Network.